The rounds in the kingdom of the divine will during Lent.
Wednesday daytime prayer. My good, my all, insatiable love. If you want love, then give me love. If you want me happy, then speak to me a love. If you want me content, then render me love.
Jesus, my love, allow me to sustain you, because I see that, unable to stand under the weight of so many pains, you stagger.
Round of Creation 7 prayer. My Jesus, forgive me if I too, a miserable, sinful soul, want you dead. But I pray you to make me die together with you. I thank you and I worship you.
In the acts that the divine will did in the first father, Adam.
I thank you and I worship you.
In the acts the divine will did in all the saints of the Old Testament.
I thank you and I worship you.
In the acts the divine will did that made its powers stand out.
I thank you and I worship you.
In the acts the divine will did that made its strength stand out.
I love you.
Your kingdom come, O please, let it be known, loved, and possessed by the human generations. I thank you and I worship you.
In the acts the divine will did that made its vivifying virtue stand out.
I thank you and I worship you.
In the honor you gave to Adam before the fall.
I thank you and I worship you.
In the first acts of Adam.
I thank you and I worship you.
When Adam possessed the unity with the supreme will.
I love you.
Your kingdom come. Oh, please, let it be known, loved, and possessed by the human generations. I thank you and I worship you.
When you asked of Noah the sacrifice of building the ark.
I thank you and I worship you.
In the heroism of Abraham.
I thank you and I worship you.
In the act of heroism of Abraham.
I thank you and I worship you.
In the act of power of Moses.
I love you.
And pray you that your eternal fiat be known, and just as it reigns triumphantly in heaven, it may come to reign triumphantly in the midst of creatures. Prayer. My heart, Jesus, your pains are mine, and I echo your reparations. Ah, your sacred heart faints. Allow me to sustain it in my hands, making your reparations and your pains my own.
My life, I shall follow you, but for now rest in my arms. Then we shall reach Mount Calvary together. Therefore, remain in me and bless me.
Round of Creation 8, Prayer. My Jesus, King of sorrows, let me sustain you and hold you tightly to my heart. I would want to take the fire that devours you to burn your enemies to ashes and rescue you, but you don't want it, because your yearnings for the cross become more ardent, and you quickly want to immolate yourself on it, also for your enemies. I thank you and I worship you.
In the act of strength of Samson.
I thank you and I worship you.
In the act of revealing what regarded the future Redeemer to the prophets.
I thank you and I worship you.
When you manifested the divine volition to the prophets.
I thank you and I worship you.
When you manifested the how of the coming of the future Redeemer to your people.
I love you.
Your kingdom come. Oh, please, let it be known, loved, and possessed by the human generations. I thank you and I worship you.
When you manifested the when of the coming of the future Redeemer to them.
I thank you and I worship you.
In the prophet's longing for the Redeemer.
I thank you and I worship you.
in their tears,
I thank you and I worship you.
in their prayers,
I thank you and I worship you.
in their penances.
I love you.
Your kingdom come, O please, let it be known, loved, and possessed by the human generations. I thank you and I worship you.
In all the prodigies the divine will did in the saints.
I thank you and I worship you.
In all the prodigies the divine will did in the patriarchs.
I thank you and I worship you.
In all the prodigies the divine will did in the prophets of the Old Testament.
I thank you and I worship you.
In all the prodigies the divine will did after Jesus' coming upon earth.
I thank you and I worship you.
In asking for the divine kingdom in the midst of creatures.
I love you.
And pray you that your eternal fiat be known, and just as it reigns triumphantly in heaven, it may come to reign triumphantly in the midst of creatures. Prayer. My tortured good Jesus, with you I repair, with you I suffer. Oh, please, my love, I don't have the heart to leave you alone. I want to share the weight of the cross with you, and to relieve you from the weight of sins. I cling to your feet.
I want to give you, in the name of all creatures, love for those who do not love you, praises for those who despise you, blessings, thanksgivings, obedience on behalf of all. I promise that in any offense you receive, I intend to offer you all of myself in reparation, to do the acts opposite to the offenses the creatures give you, and to console you with my kisses and continuous acts of love.
Round of Creation 9 prayer. But I see that I am too miserable. I need you to be able to really repair you. Therefore, I unite myself to your most holy humanity, and together with you, I unite my thoughts to yours in order to repair for all the evil thoughts, mine and of all, my eyes to yours, to repair for evil glances, my mouth to yours, to repair for the blasphemies and the evil discourses, my heart to yours, to repair for all the evil tendencies, desires, and affections. I thank you and I worship you.
To my Creator in all your acts,
I thank you and I worship you.
in the residence of earth,
I thank you and I worship you.
in all the residents of earth,
I thank you and I worship you.
in all its inhabitants,
I thank you and I worship you.
in all their heartbeats,
I thank you and I worship you.
through each heartbeat.
I love you.
Your kingdom come, O please, let it be known, loved, and possessed by the human generations. I thank you and I worship you.
In every heartbeat,
I thank you and I worship you.
through every heart,
I thank you and I worship you.
through every heart of creatures,
I thank you and I worship you.
wanting to enclose myself in every heart.
I love you.
Your kingdom come. Oh, please let it be known, loved, and possessed by the human generations. I thank you and I worship you.
And shout from within every heart,
I love you. I thank you and I worship you.
in the love of all creatures,
I thank you and I worship you.
to my Creator in every affection,
I thank you and I worship you.
in every drop of blood,
I thank you and I worship you.
to my Creator in every breath,
I thank you and I worship you.
in the air that creatures breathe,
I love you.
and pray you that your eternal fiat be known, and just as it reigns triumphantly in heaven, it may come to reign triumphantly in the midst of creatures. Prayer. In a word, I want to repair everything that your most holy humanity repairs, uniting myself to the immensity of your love for all, and to the immense good you do to all. But I am not yet content.
I want to unite myself to your divinity, and I dissolve my nothingness in it, and in this way I give you everything.
Wednesday, Midmorning. Jesus, I give you your love to quench your bitternesses.
Round of Creation 10 Prayer. I give you your sacred heart to relieve you from our coldness, lack of correspondence, ingratitude, and the little love of creatures. I give you your harmonies to cheer your hearing from the deafening blasphemies it receives. I thank you and I worship you.
Through each movement of creatures.
I thank you and I worship you.
In each act of creature.
I thank you and I worship you.
In all the acts of creatures.
I thank you and I worship you.
In all acts of creatures in the past.
I love you.
Your kingdom come. O please, let it be known, loved, and possessed by the human generations. I thank you and I worship you.
In all the acts of creatures in the present.
I thank you and I worship you.
In all acts of creatures in the future.
I thank you and I worship you.
Everywhere where the divine will is present.
I thank you and I worship you.
In every place where the divine will is present.
I love you.
Your kingdom come. O please, let it be known, loved, and possessed by the human generations. I thank you and I worship you.
In order to requite the supreme love.
I thank you and I worship you.
For so much love toward the creatures.
I thank you and I worship you.
For all.
I thank you and I worship you.
With all.
I thank you and I worship you.
In all.
I thank you and I worship you.
In the hearts of all.
I love you.
And pray you that your eternal fiat be known, and just as it reigns triumphantly in heaven, it may come to reign triumphantly in the midst of creatures. Prayer. I give you your beauty to relieve you from the ugliness of our souls, when we muddy ourselves in sin. I give you your purity to relieve you from the lack of righteous intention, and from the mud and rot you see in many souls.
I give you your immensity to relieve you from the voluntary constraints into which souls put themselves.
Reading. Volume 14, 2, 24, 1922. My daughter, when I received the cross, I looked at it from top to bottom to see the place that each soul would take in my cross. Among so many of them, I looked with more love, and I paid a more special attention to those who would be resigned and would live in my divine will. I looked at them, and I saw their cross, long and large just as mine, because my divine will made up for all that their cross lacked, making it longer and larger like mine. Oh, how your long cross stood out! So very long because of many years of bed, and suffered only to fulfill my divine will. My cross existed only to fulfill the will of my celestial Father, and yours to fulfill my divine will. One gave honor to the other, and since both of them had the same measure, they blended together. Now, my divine will has the virtue of softening hardness, of soothing bitterness, of extending and enlarging short things. So, when I felt the cross upon my shoulders, I felt the softness and the sweetness of the cross of the souls who would suffer in my divine will. Ah, my heart heaved a sigh of relief, and the softness of the crosses of these souls made my cross adapt to my shoulders, sinking so much into it as to make me a deep wound. And although it gave me a sharp pain, I also felt the softness and the sweetness of the souls who would suffer in my divine will. And since my divine will is eternal, their suffering, their reparations, their acts ran within each drop of my blood, in each wound, in each offense. My divine will made them be as though present at the offenses of the past, from the moment the first man sinned up to the present and future offenses. They were the ones who returned to me the rights of my divine will, and for love of them I decreed redemption. And if others enter into it, it is because of these souls that they partake in it. There is no good I concede, either in heaven or on earth, which is not because of them.
Responsory. Jesus, give you your ardor to burn all sins and all hearts, so that all may love you and no one may offend you ever again.
Wednesday, Midday. Jesus, in sum, I give you all that you are, to give you infinite satisfaction, eternal, immense, and infinite love.
Round of Creation 11 prayer. I unite my steps to yours, and when you, weak, bled dry, and staggering, are about to fall, I shall be at your side to sustain you. I shall place my shoulders beneath the cross, so as to share its weight with you. Do not disdain me, but accept me as your faithful companion. I thank you and I worship you.
Through each thought of creature.
I thank you and I worship you.
Over each thought of creature.
I thank you and I worship you.
In every thought of creature.
I thank you and I worship you.
In each thought of creature.
I love you.
Your kingdom come, O please. Let it be known, loved, and possessed by the human generations. I thank you and I worship you.
And I ask for the dominion of the divine fiat over each intelligence.
I thank you and I worship you.
In the flight of every gaze.
I thank you and I worship you.
Through each gaze.
I thank you and I worship you.
And I leave my.
I thank you and I worship you.
Within them.
I love you.
Your kingdom come. Oh, please let it be known, loved, and possessed by the human generations. I thank you and I worship you.
Spoken through each mouth.
I thank you and I worship you.
In the sound of every word.
I thank you and I worship you.
Through each word.
I thank you and I worship you.
And I seal them in my.
I thank you and I worship you.
To my Creator.
I love you.
And pray you that your eternal fiat be known, and just as it reigns triumphantly in heaven, it may come to reign triumphantly in the midst of creatures.
Prayer. Jesus, my fallen love, let me help you to stand. Let me kiss you, dry your blood, and repair together with you for those who sin out of ignorance, fragility, and weakness. I pray you to give help to these souls. My suffering Jesus, I too unite with the pierced Mama.
Reading, Volume 13, 11, 16, 1921. My daughter, during the course of my passion, all the other pains competed with each other, but they would alternate. One would give the place to another, almost like sentries. They would mount guard to do the worst to me, and to boast about having been better than the other. But the ropes were never taken away from me. From the moment I was taken up to Mount Calvary, I remained always bound. Rather, they kept adding more and more ropes and chains for fear that I might escape, and to make more fun of me. But how many pains, confusions, humiliations, and falls did these chains procure me? However, know that in these chains there was a great mystery and great expiation. As man begins to fall into sin, he remains bound with the chains of his own sin. If it is grave, they are iron chains. If venial, they are chains of rope. So as he tries to walk in good, he feels the hindrance of the chains, and his step remains hindered. This hindrance he feels wears him out, debilitates him, and leads him to new falls. If he works, he feels hindrance in his hands and remains almost as if he had no hands to do good. In seeing him bound like this, passions make feast and say, "The victory is ours." And from the king he is, they render him slave of brutal passions. How abominable man is in the state of sin. And I, in order to break his chains, wanted to be bound and never be without chains, so as to keep my chains ever ready to break his. And when the blows and the shoves would make me fall, I would stretch my hands toward him to untie him and make him free again.
As he was saying this, I saw almost all peoples bound by chains, in such a way as to arouse pity. And I prayed Jesus to touch their chains with his chains, so that, at the touch of his chains, those of the creatures would be all shattered.
Jesus, I make all your pains, and every drop of your blood my own.
Wednesday, mid-afternoon. Jesus, in each wound I want to act as a mama for you, and together with Mama Mary and with you, I repair for all the dangerous encounters, and for those who expose themselves to the occasion of sin, or, forced by necessity to be exposed, remain entangled in sin.
Round of Creation 12, Prayer. My Jesus, let me place my shoulder under the cross to relieve you and repair with you for all hidden sins. I thank you and I worship you.
In every work.
I thank you and I worship you.
Through each work.
I thank you and I worship you.
To my Creator in every step.
I thank you and I worship you.
Through each step.
I thank you and I worship you.
And I cover them with my
I love you.
Your kingdom come. Oh, please let it be known, loved, and possessed by the human generations. I love you. I love you. I thank you and I worship you.
To my Creator for myself.
I love you. I love you. I thank you and I worship you.
To my Creator for all.
I love you.
Your kingdom come. Oh, please, let it be known, loved, and possessed by the human generations. I thank you and I worship you.
For all and for each soul.
I love you. I love you. I thank you and I worship you.
To my Creator, who so much loved me.
I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you.
Your kingdom come. Oh, please, let it be known, loved, and possessed by the human generations. I thank you and I worship you.
For everyone and for everything.
I thank you and I worship you.
As you love me.
I thank you and I worship you.
In everything. In everything.
I love you. I thank you and I worship you.
To my Creator with my kisses.
I thank you and I worship you.
with that same eternal love with which you created us.
I love you.
And pray you that your eternal fiat be known, and just as it reigns triumphantly in heaven, it may come to reign triumphantly in the midst of creatures. Prayer. My Jesus, while I repair with you, I pray you to hold me in your arms, but so tightly that there may be no pain that you suffer in which I do not take part, so as to be transformed in them, and make up for the abandonment of all creatures.
I pray you that your passion be always in my mind, in my heart, in my gazes, in my steps, and in my pains, so that wherever I turn, inside and outside of myself, I may always find you present in me.
Reading Volume 2, 9/2/1899. My daughter, keep the light of my passion ever before your mind, for in seeing my most bitter pains, yours shall seem little to you, and in considering the cause for which I suffered so many immense pains, which was sin, your littlest defects shall seem grave to you. On the other hand, if you do not reflect yourself in me, the littlest pains shall seem heavy to you, and you will hold grave defects as nothing.
Responsory. Jesus, I want to expose all of myself to relieve you. I want to enter into your interior and give you, oh Jesus, heartbeat for heartbeat, breath for breath, affection for affection, desire for desire.
Fiat.